Giant Oak 4 lengths from the lead, and the field turns for home. It is still Roll holding on. Havre de Grace is full out, and those two in a battle as they enter the final furlong now. In behind them, flat out is third, and the filly is in front. It is Havre de Grace, flat out with the final try coming down to the finish, and it will be Havre de Grace.
Welcome back to another edition of A Case for Racing Immortality here on Racing Rundown. And today we'll discuss 2011 Horse of the Year, Havre de Grace, from the famed Fox Hill Farm, trained by Larry Jones, and for the majority of her career ridden by Ramon Dominguez. Obviously, as I just mentioned, a Horse of the Year in 2011, as well as champion older mare that year. But let's start at the very beginning of Havre de Grace's career, where she went 9 for 16 lifetime with 4 seconds and 2/3. She lost her first race, lost a maiden special weight before in her second start, breaking her maiden. And those were the first 2 starts of her 2-year-old year, and those were the only starts. She was on the shelf for a little bit, returned early in her 3-year-old year, too late to make an impact on the Kentucky Oaks Trail, and won an allowance race at Philadelphia Park. A little lesser known fact, considering her 2011 year was so illustrious. In 2009 and 2010, she was actually trained by Anthony Dutrow. So when she was most notably won the Cotillion at 3, I'll touch on that in a second, she was trained by Anthony Dutrow. So after that allowance win that I just previously mentioned, she went on to run second in 2 stakes at Delaware, as well as the Alabama, before finally getting off the mark in the Cotillion Stakes at Philadelphia Park, as it was called then, when that race was a grade 2 as well, now being a grade 1. She ended up finishing her year in the Breeders' Cup Ladies Classic at Churchill Downs, one of the favorites, and this was actually her first race against Older, and she ran a very solid third, only behind Unrivaled Bell and a rival of hers in Blind Luck. She actually held the losing record in that 5-race rivalry with Blind Luck. She had lost 3 races to Blind Luck, winning 2 of them. But at 4, Rick Porter decided to send her to the barn of Larry Jones, his probably top trainer. And she started off the year 3 straight wins, 2 at Oaklawn Park, including the grade 1 Apple Blossom, as well as the Obeah at Delaware Park following that. Then the Delaware Handicap rolled around. That's when she lost to Blind Luck. That was the only time she lost to her that year. But then from that race, took a big shot, entered the Woodward against older males. She, a 4-year-old filly at this time. And in that race, won the grade 1 Woodward at Saratoga, beating the likes of Flat Out, Mission Impossible, Icebox. It wasn't maybe the strongest group of older males you can find, but Flat Out that year did go on to win the Jockey Club Gold Cup and do much more after that point in his career. So that was an impressive horse that she beat there. She prepped for the Breeders' Cup that year by winning the Beldame at Belmont in very impressive fashion by over 8 lengths. In the process, beating Royal Delta, who would go on to win the Breeders' Cup Ladies Classic later that year. Connections decided to take a big shot at her in the Breeders' Cup Classic, a race that she did not put in her best performance, ran 4th behind a couple long shots, Drosselmeyer, Game on Dude, and Ruler on Ice in that race, but also finished in front of a couple good horses, like To Honor and Serve, So You Think. Icebox was also in there, Uncle Mo. So she beat some good horses despite losing the race. Unfortunately, 2011 was not a strong year for the sport of horse racing. Your Derby winner, Animal Kingdom, didn't go on to do much, and you had long shots win the Preakness and the Belmont. So the 3-year-olds in the dirt route division didn't really show up and produce much. The older male division was all up in air. And she was just kind of the benefit of a weak year in horse racing, and as a result, was crowned Horse of the Year in 2011. Following that, she would run once in 2012, winning the New Orleans Ladies, a listed stakes at the fairgrounds, before ultimately calling it a career. That fall, at the Fasig-Ticton November sale, she sold for $10 million to Mandy Pope's Whisper Hill Farm. So obviously, she was well regarded in that sense. You're going to get a big price on a Horse of the Year from the year prior. So Havre de Grace, a very talented mare, especially when she was on her best. And personally, I mean, every single segment we do for this series, we're going to discuss if we believe that they should be in the Hall of Fame. Personally, I think that the Horse of the Year label is going to carry her a lot further, but I don't think she's maybe of that level. She had a very nice career, a very illustrious career, winning races like the Apple Blossom and the Beldame. The Woodward win is obviously going to be the biggest, beating males as a female. But I think the fact she, at 2 and 3 especially, never really competed in the major, I should say when she competed in a race like the Alabama, but even then she never really won a super, pivotal race in the grand scheme of horse racing, like a Breeders' Cup, like a Kentucky Oaks, or anything of that nature. And I think that's what kind of sets her back, in my opinion. Another big thing is that in that Horse of the Year campaign, she only won 3 Grade 1s. She only won 3 Grade 1s in her entire career. And there's a lot of horses out there that will win 3 Grade 1s in their career and not make the Hall of Fame. So when you put it into that perspective, it does kind of deteriorate from that Horse of the Year label and from her just overall career. I do think that especially when she started to face the tough horses, she did start to falter a little, like when she would face Blind Luck, who she held that losing record against. The Classic wasn't a bad performance, but she never really had an excuse when she lost that race. And the same goes for the Ladies Classic the year prior in 2010 and 2011, respectively. She ran her best race, but it just didn't seem like the Havre de Grace we'd known. And who knows, it could have been a Churchill Downs thing. She was 0 for 2 over that course. She was consistent in her entire career. Her only off-the-board performance was that Breeders' Cup Classic where she finished 4th. So all in all, I think that Havre de Grace, while a very talented mare and one that'll go down in history for being a female horse, crowned Horse of the Year, as well as winning a race like the Woodward as a female horse, I think that when you look at the competition she beat and the races she won in a rather weak year where the Horse of the Year title was up for grabs for really anybody, I think that kind of deteriorates from her. But who knows, the voters might think differently. We'll find out soon enough whether or not they think that a female horse winning Horse of the Year is worthy in itself to enter the Hall of Fame. So that'll wrap it up for this edition of A Case for Racing Immortality. We'll have more for you next time on the Racing Rundown.
And it's Havre de Grace in front. Havre de Grace comes off the turn. Nothing left for life at 10. And the 3-year-old filly, Royal Delta, now moves to second. 1 furlong to go and a great one to catch. Havre de Grace clear by 5. Then Royal Delta second. Ramon Dominguez eases up on Havre de Grace. She wins with something left. Something left for the Breeders' Cup.